Good evening and welcome to the U Talk show, where we talk mainly. Um,
How many
we
times
have
have we
tried to
made that
do some
joke?
civics education in the past. We've also hinted at our own aspirations towards developing policy to make Australia a better place, and if we're being entirely honest, indulging our megalomania just a touch to make the world a better place. In order to fully understand our policy proposals, it is important to understand what they seek to address. And so today we ask ourselves, what exactly are the areas of public policy and why do they matter? Because the follow on question will always be, and what can we do to make them better? So I'm going to hand over to Kyle, who has much more succinct explanations for this than I do. And in the
I'm not sure.
meantime, I'm
I'm
going
not
to
sure if I'd
continue
call.
bantering with Kyle while I try and work up a graphics asset for one of our coming videos. Kyle,
Yeah,
tell me about public policy.
I'm not sure if they're entirely succinct, but I've tried to do that. So each public policy area and why do they matter? I think there are 10. I hope I haven't forgotten any. I'm just gonna read them to you and let Horst speak every now and then. Um, So there's economic policy. This determines living standards and equity within the economy for everyone, including you watching this right now. Your equity in the economy depends on economic policy in large part. Without a well-managed economy, you're insecure in your living standards. You could lose your job, your business, your livelihood, etc. That is why it's important. Horst, anything to add to that?
No, I think that's a quite
Okay, moving
excellent
along.
summary.
Healthcare policy. So you need healthcare when you get sick or injured. That much is pretty obvious to most people. And a good healthcare system ensures your survival. Yes, you watching this right now. Your survival will depend on some point throughout your life, or at some point in your life, on the healthcare system and whether or not that hospital has received enough funding and whether or not it's got enough doctors, nurses, equipment, whatever. Essentially, if it's well resourced and well staffed, you're probably going to live. But if it's not, you have that much more of a chance of dying. Anything to add to that?
I I hate that, but that's correct.
It is correct.
Thanks, I hate it.
Yeah. Education and training policy. I am a big fan of education and training policy. It's kind of a passion of mine, along with anti-corruption policy. Um, so let me just ask a question, and Horse, pretend to be the audience for me for a bit here. Do you want your friends, family, and community to be stupid, incompetent, unskilled, and ill-informed about the world and everything around them? Is that what you want?
Um, I mean, it's exploitable.
Jeez. I'm not asking if you're a business tycoon wanting to exploit people. I'm asking if, as a wonderful member of society,
It is
you want.
important to recognize, though, that there are certain people who want that. Personally, I don't. I mean, I personally do wish people would just trust me with things sometimes, but different problem space.
Well, generally speaking, at least maybe I'm being a bit hopeful here, but I think most people do not want that. Most people want everyone around them to be, well, not stupid, not incompetent, at least somewhat skilled, able to do something. And they want
Mm-hmm.
them to actually know about things. That way they can, at the very least, hold a decent conversation. So, assuming the answer is no, and that I'm not just being way too optimistic, then we need a good system of education and training in order to ensure that that happens. And I have a bunch of different proposals, but we don't have enough time, and I forgot to do the bloody thing again.
Okay, just
Um,
keep going, keep going. I'll keep
six
you on
minute
track for
timer.
time.
Yeah. Um, okay, so then there is social services policies. I mean, when you a friend, a family member, or someone in the community in which you reside falls on hard times, social services provides that safety net for people to get back up on their feet. That's what it does. It's an important service. That it does that is why it's important to pay attention to social services policy. I don't know if there's anything
Yep.
to add to that. I don't have a joke either.
Nope,
Insert
I
joke
don't.
here. I'm going to do something in post production. Not sure what it is. So then there's law enforcement policy, essentially policing. This can also kind of cover like some oversight stuff, but there's a specific category for that though. Bit of overlap. So law enforcement, I mean, it creates a stable and safe society. But of course, it needs to be limited to avoid abuse of power. There needs to be limits on police powers, of course. But again, that in my mind is not just about like legal limits, but also about training and police culture and all that. So all of that, because it's not just a delicate matter, but a very important matter. Because without that, organized crime, criminals, gangs running around, basically New South Wales.
Basically, New South Wales has the Queensland Police.
Well, I was going to say New South Wales in the past, but no, just New South Wales. Because, hello, Fixated Persons Unit. Then there's foreign and defense policy. Yep. I mean, look, there's a lot there. International trade, it's made us much wealthier. Trading with China and a lot of Southeast Asia, as it's on average, each of us is like $14,000 richer because of that. It's really good. But at the same time, you need, fair trade at the same time. There's a big debate between like free trade, fair trade, what kind of trade is right, and, avoiding things like the TPP, handing our sovereignty to corporations. But that's a whole different story. We'll get to that another time. Yep. Then there's, diplomacy. I mean, diplomacy can protect our national interest and it can avoid wars. So we need good diplomats and we need good diplomatic policy. A very good way of interacting with the rest of the world and other countries. This can be very difficult at times, but that's why we need to ensure that good people have the reins and that we have a good policy on how to approach other nations and deal with them and their leadership.
It avoids complications.
Yeah. And also a strong defense policy just ensures national security. I mean, look, if you're a turtle with a bunch of guns strapped to you, ain't no one fucking with you.
Where the fuck did that come from?
I don't know. I just thought of it now. I'm running out of time, so I'm getting loose with the analogies. But yeah, it ensures security, stability, and independence of our nation. If we don't have a strong military defense, then we can be threatened by other nations into submitting to what they want rather than doing what we want. Then environmental policy. Now, this is going to take a turn for the interesting, as Horst will not understand why I'm starting with this, but so much of your mental health, well-being, self-development, and more is determined by the environment that you grow up in. A good environment is very important to you, and that also includes needing trees because we need to breathe oxygen and trees produce oxygen. And also, it needs grass. It needs a somewhat natural part of that environment to be part of that environmental space in which you grow up. Did that make sense, Horst? Or did I just kind of lose that train off the rails?
It went a little off the rails.
But did it make enough sense? Anything to add?
It mostly made sense.
Okay, moving along. Government integrity and oversight policy. Without oversight mechanisms to ensure integrity in government, political parties, politicians, and even bureaucrats, government bureaucracies and organizations engage in corruption. We don't want that. Let's go. We've seen where it can go very recently at multiple levels of government and in the past.
Yeah.
Yes. So, plenty of examples there, which is slightly depressing, but moving along, unless you have something to add.
I really don't. I think that's sort of... I mean, we have been ardently against corruption.
It's what got me into politics. Like, literally, it's wanting to end corruption, specifically the corruption of of political donations, otherwise known as legalized bribery.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I guess moving along then, or unless you were you gonna say something?
Nope.
Did I
I think
just cut
that's
it off?
all. Nope.
Okay.
That's
Then there is cultural and community development. This one I've gotten into recently. Like I didn't think it was a huge deal, but I realized it's actually very important. Because a culture and a community is essentially a large part of that environment in which you grow up, but it's the people in that environment. And
absolutely.
they can impart, like, a good culture and a good community can impart very good lessons onto you. And a bad culture and bad community can do the opposite. And right now, we increasingly lack community in Australia. We these days, everyone basically we lack community. Everyone's miserable for it. People have less friends. Romantic partners hard to find. Instead of building community, we've been pitted against each other, mostly by the media, but also by various identitarian ideological forces that I very much despise, because screw identity politics. And that's running out of time. So let's get through these this last bit. And yeah, also without culture, I'll say there's just materialism. And materialism, like, material wealth won't make you happy. Um, it's like it. I mean, it was kind of an inherent lesson that you learn through life when I was young. Is that still a thing, Horst? Is it still a lesson that we all just learn, or has society just
It's
forgotten
still
to
a lot of
teach?
people. A lot of people still say it, but I think amidst the economic pressure that a lot of people are feeling, the counter argument is like, sure, money won't make you happy, but it's a lot easier to be happy when you're not struggling to eat dinner.
Yeah, yeah. And that's in my opinion screw it, not in my opinion, as an absolute fact, I will go on a limb here and say that is a problem caused by the very commercialist aspect of the commercial aspect of politics, completely overriding everything else from culture, well, except for identity, but from culture to the human interest,
Mm-hmm.
essentially the commercial interest, and corporations basically just got their way with everything, and, well, culture's dying, and we're all miserable.
Yep.
Yay!
That's
Anyway,
a
so
really, really,
yeah, very depressing.
really.
Sorry, guys. You know what? If that was depressing, let me cheer you up with this last one: taxes and incentives policy.
Ugh.
If corporations don't pay tax, you foot the bill. And if nobody pays tax, then the government can't provide anything that we've just talked about. All of that goes out the window. Like, any kind of policy that is in any of those areas to improve our lives and build community, create a better environment to live in, and also animals to live in, and environmental management, bad education, or any education at all, um, you know, can't even be provided if we don't have taxes being paid. I was once told by someone who I think is not particularly well thought out that taxes are theft. That is wrong. Straight up, it is not true.
Taxation
Taxes,
without representation is theft.
well, I mean, look, I have an esoteric argument against that, but it doesn't really matter. So I won't make it. But basically, how I see taxes, and I think factually what taxes are, is their payment for services rendered.
Yes.
That is, again, everything we talked about. Those are the services that government renders. Policy to improve those areas of policy, those facets of our society. Taxes are the payment which we give in order to ensure that can happen. And yeah, that's all of it. Hi everybody.
Yeah, I think we've sort of sorted it.